This is the Agoro Carbon Farming Podcast. Agoro Carbon Alliance is taking action on a global scale to reverse the effects of climate change by decarbonizing farming and restoring carbon to the world's soil. On this podcast, we're going to explore carbon farming from the soil to the atmosphere and how it affects everyone in between. To learn more, visit us at agorocarbonalliance.com. Thanks for joining another edition of the Carbon Farming Podcast with the Agoro Carbon Alliance. This is the next step episode. So we've talked to some growers and some ranchers and some of our agronomists here at Agoro to kind of understand what we're trying to do, which is to capture carbon in the soil, which has two profound impacts. One, it makes the farming practice better, and it also provides a farmer or rancher an added income stream, which can help in their profitability. Today's episode, we're going to go a step further. So if you're one of those growers that has, or ranchers that have decided, you know what, I think this is what I want to do, and you sign on the dotted line, Agoro is not going to walk away from you. We have some conservation agronomists on our team, and we have two of them with us today, Steve Hasselman and Mark Worner. Mark was on an early episode of this podcast and was explaining a little bit about Agoro Carbon Alliance. But now Mark has moved into a role, and Steve is in a role where they are helping the growers through the entire process. After you've signed a contract, they're going to be the ones that are going to be with you throughout the process, through the 10-year contract that you've signed, and help you out, answer questions, and make the process as easy and seamless as possible. Mark and Steve, thanks for joining us. Steve, I'm going to throw the first question out to you. What happens after that grower or rancher signs the contract? What's the next step that they should expect?
Sure. So after signing the contract, there is a 3-year historical data that we need to collect on those farms, as well as boundaries too. If a farmer does have shape files, that really helps that lift good. But if they do not, we can still pencil them in and draw them in our platform. So when we go into that 3-year historical data for row crop, it's things like harvest information, planting information, chemical, fertilizer applications, and irrigation, if applicable. Mm-hmm. A lot of that information is required by our registry, not just to compile that information for the heck of it, but to make sure that every part of our program is within their parameters.
Got it. So Mark, we're establishing a baseline for the beginning of this 10-year partnership. What if they don't have the information? What if they don't have all of the records for the past 3 years? Or is that something that really isn't an issue, that the growers and ranchers have that information?
So I guess that it comes to us in a multitude of different formats. It can be as simple as sitting down and saying, what crop did you plant in this field in this year? What were your yields that year? What did you plant? When was your plant date? Kind of simple information like that. So we're usually able to talk through what we need as far as information for the data, even if they don't have it digitally. If they do have it digitally, that is, like Steve said, even better. But we're capable of inputting the information we need without having the digital copies or information.
Once that information is collected and put into the database and we establish a baseline, is that when you guys go in and start advising on how they're going to improve their carbon sequestration and start growing carbon?
So to speak, it should be, through the kind of the analysis of their historical practices, we hope to have kind of an idea of how they're going to implement the change going into signing the contract. And that kind of goes into which additionality they tend to sign up for in the contract, whether it be no-till or cover crops. So I'd say kind of the framework is probably set when we're explaining the contract and trying to decide which implementation changes for them. But after that, our hope is to be really a resource to these growers and ranchers to kind of be a relay of information, so to speak, where, our hope is that we're working with a multitude of growers across the country and even globally. And through doing that, we're going to be seeing a lot of examples of these practice changes. And that's what's personally exciting to me is when you see somebody try something new and it works, being able to relay that information to other growers and share that success to help others succeed is kind of, maybe an overall mission of ours at the Grower Success Team. not only just implementing data, but to be a resource for information and helping these growers be as successful as possible in their practice change.
I think that's brilliant that, as we're all learning, we're sharing those learnings and helping each other kind of raise all boats. Steve, does a grower or rancher, do they get assigned a contact person? Or is there a number that they call and they just get help at the whim of the team? Or how does that all work?
No, the way we tackle that is we do assign one particular grower success team member to a grower. That's just a lot easier. You have a face that you know throughout the process. You'll get familiar with us, and there's a more trusting relationship that way when you have one person assigned per farm. So they know the history on that farm. They know the practices being implemented, and they work shoulder to shoulder with the grower.
How often does that communication happen? Is it on the phone? Is it email? Is it face to face? And how frequent does that happen?
A combination of all of the above, really. We like to have quarterly touch points with growers when that's welcome. If there's any hiccups that come up along the way, our phones are always on, and we encourage our growers to, just shoot a text or a call and reach out as much or as little as they want to.
I think that is great. A lot of times in today's society, that face-to-face connection with people is sometimes lost, and you become just a simple number, especially after you've agreed to buy. And it's reassuring, I'm sure, to everyone listening that that's where the relationship actually starts after you sign the contract, and that you have a support team. Any questions that you have, any issues that you may encounter, you go to your contact. You have their cell phone number, their email address, and you don't have to dial into a 1-800 phone tree and wait on hold for 20 minutes like I did this morning with my bank. What are some of the common things that you do, Mark, after someone signed the contract and you get this the baseline 3-year historical numbers? What typically happens after that as you're developing the relationship with these growers?
So where we're at now, I guess, is we're kind of going through this process with some of these first practices or these first growers we've signed up. I guess we've gone through the mapping where we got their fields, we've gone through all their paperwork and signed on, and now we're starting to do some of these face-to-face grower visits, and we're starting to see what these growers have changed or plan to change. And that's where it really gets exciting. I've been on some ranches in the Pacific Northwest and seen some things that I had never seen before this job. And it's exciting to go onto these forums with a level of excitement that's also being shared by these growers who are excited about their practice change. There's a lot of good energy, I would say, around it. The growers and ranchers that I've been lucky enough to meet with face to face, they're optimistic and they're excited about what they're doing agronomically, but also the fact that they're gaining some financial benefit out of being part of our carbon program. So the feedback's been good and the interactions have been good. And it's been a lot of fun to get on the acres that we're active on.
The reason why we have these success programs in place is we want the growers and the ranchers to be as successful as they can. If they sign the contract and start to make changes and find friction or hurdles that they're running into and just give up, that doesn't benefit anyone. So it's nice to have you two and the rest of your team, these customer success agents that are out there and helping the growers and ranchers do better. If I was a grower and I signed up and now I have my key contact on my speed dial on my phone and I'm starting to make these changes, and of course they're helping or hopefully helping with the agronomic benefit of my farm and my ranches. When do I get paid? Show me the money, Mark. Show me the money, Steve. Steve, when do I get paid? How does that all work?
Steve holds the checkbook, so we got that.
Yep, false information there. So with our contract, we do have some flexibility with that. The grower can elect to either take some annual, we call them finance payments, for the first few years of the contract. And those are flat per acre dollar amounts per year that a grower will be paid, and they can choose which quarter to take that payment in as well. Those are used in conjunction with issuance payments that are made after the follow-up soil samples are taken to gauge how much carbon has been built in that particular farm. And those soil samples happen in years 5 and 10 of our contract. So a grower can elect to do that, take those first 4 years of payments. Those annual payments will come out of that first issuance payments, of course, because they're financed and paid ahead. Or the grower can choose to forego those forward payments and kind of bankroll it all into the issuance payments in years 5 and 10.
Excellent. I love that there's some options available there and you're not painting me into a corner. Is the money real? I mean, you guys are working on a 5 and 10-year plan here. Is the money real? I was recently told by your marketing department that there is a press release that you can go to agorocarbonalliance.com and look on the news tab about a $9 million payment that has gone out recently. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so that dollar amount is reflective of what we have paid out to growers in former payments as of now. And those are real acres, real contracts, real growers that have signed up with us to be a part of our carbon program. And those are all payments that are already in the hands of growers that they can use to get started on implementing that practice change. So there's been a lot of, smoke in the industry over the years about, Steve and I can attest that there's probably a lot of growers that we've talked to that came to us that had maybe signed up for a program 3 or 4 years ago and were given a lot of promises and never got paid. For us, this $9 million payment is the proof is in the pudding, like they say. And our money is going into these growers' hands.
Agoro Carbon Alliance puts their money where their mouth is. Not only are they actually paying out the money, but they're supporting you through the whole process. Not just until the contract gets signed and then they kind of go off and it's promises in the wind. Steve, Mark, and the customer success team is there so that you have a personal contact. So you can make sure that you can maximize the contract and the money that you have coming to you and the agronomic benefits. Let's not play that down either. This is a revenue stream, an additional revenue stream for the growers and farmers, but it's also beneficial agronomically. It's been proven over years and years and years. So you mentioned, Steve, about these soil samples and testing that needs to be done. Mark, tell me a little bit more about these soil samples. How frequent do they occur, and what are we looking for when you send those to the lab?
So the plan is to do samples at year 1, year 5, and year 10. So first year is for a baseline, and the 5th year is in the middle of a contract to settle up, so to speak, like Steve had just discussed. So we're going to have somewhat of an estimate of what we think we are going to sequester, but these soil samples are to truth those estimates and make sure we're paying growers accordingly for the carbon that they're sequestering. So if they were to do far better than expected, they stand to gain financially from as good as possible with how those soils sequester carbon. As far as physically, what do the samples look like? We work on a stratification model where we have points that are established throughout a field, and our soil sampling teams will go out and sample those exact locations over these 3 periods so that we're having accurate replication of where we're sampling from. And the samples are taken as far as soil sample, but also a bulk density test so that we can extrapolate how much carbon is over the acres. Kind of a tedious compared to normal soil sampling. There's a little bit more work that goes into it as far as looking for soil carbon. But yeah, very similar approach.
But the grower doesn't need to worry about that. You guys have a team that comes and does that. You just say, schedule a time with me, come out to the ranch, and you do all the work while I sit in my truck in the air conditioning.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, our team, we have several teams that will be doing soil sampling, and we take care of all that. The grower doesn't have to worry a bit about it.
That's great. Hey, Steve, when they sign the contract or before they sign the contract, there's kind of an analysis of what could possibly be a payout or possibly be a benefit on the ranch. Is that done with some modeling? Is that how you generate from year 1 to year 5? Because that's a big time frame between year 1 baseline soil sample and year 5. How do you know what that curve of carbon sequestration is going to be?
Yeah, a lot of that has to do with their geography and the past farming practices. as far as how that affects the the financial part of it, those forward payments are flat per acre payments. So for those first 4 years, you won't be affected on that. It's the issuance payments then that you can do different things to try to rack up more carbon dollars and put yourself in a better place that way. Between that historical data that we do collect and plugging that into the model that takes into account rainfall and climate information for wherever that particular farm is, we can get a pretty good idea using that as to what to expect.
Do other companies, it just hit me, do other companies have this customer success component built into their programs? If I'm a grower that's looking at my options out there, what should I be asking of the companies that I'm approaching or that are approaching me, so that I know that I'm going to have you two out there holding my hand and walking me through this whole process?
As far as I know, I believe we are somewhat exclusive in this concept of having this grower success team that's focused on working with these customers throughout the length of the contract. Historically, looking at some of the situations in the carbon market, it was absolutely not the case. Even what salesmen might be calling on them might change by the day or week. It was kind of the Wild West there for a while. But yeah, I feel we have a fairly unique model here with our grower success team, and it really goes into the consistency with our company and Agoro in general. I think that really ties in with the backing we have in Yara. I feel that we really have a nice concrete business here with a concrete team, and we want that to kind of follow through with our contracts and our growers through the length of their experience with us.
I've always been impressed with the amount of information that Agoro provides a potential grower or rancher in really understanding their farming practices and putting realistic expectations out there. Let's go to the next step. I really believe this is the thing that's going to be best for my family farm, and I sign the contract. Once I get going and I am in this 1 month, 2 months, what are some of the common questions or issues that you two see, Steve?
Yeah, so with these, in row crop country here, with these changes in practices, there can be, certain hurdles when you start taking tillage passes out or managing nitrogen differently, or, incorporating cover crops. So with the cover crops, a lot of it revolves around termination and, how do I manage a cover crop well so I can capitalize on the biomass production and the carbon sequestration with it, but how can I do that without having any effect on my crop? So a lot of it revolves around the termination. Do I elect to do a winter kill, or can I roller crimp it, or can I kill it with herbicide in the spring? And with things like soybeans, that's not quite as critical since they can power through it pretty good. But, if you're going to put a rye cover crop in front of corn, you want to know what you're doing for sure, or have somebody in your back pocket that can advise you on that. So that would probably be about the concern that I've come across, is just management of the cover crop and how can I go about reducing these tillage passes without adversely affecting the crop.
Historically, a lot of tilling was done to create a seed bed and to control weeds. Are you there to help advise them that, okay, now I'm not tilling to create this seed bed, or now I'm having tremendous weed pressure? What do I do since I have made the decision not to till for those weeds? Mark?
Yeah, that's kind of the exciting part for me, and really in the row crop side of things, is how do we use these tools, so to speak, cover crops, and get rid of tillage and still have our cash crop, a viable cash crop. And it really, in my mind, kind of revolves into working with our environment instead of working against it.
Mm-hmm.
On our own personal farm a couple of years ago, we were able to plant soybeans, no-till soybeans, into a cover crop mix, roller crimp it, and get away with one herbicide pass.
Wow.
Where in a lot of the parts of the country in no-till soybeans, we're looking at 2 or maybe even 3 herbicide passes. So there are ways to work with these programs and even minimize our herbicide use. So it's just trying these experiences and trying these different practices and finding a new way to do things.
Mark, that is exciting news. I was just thinking, okay, if I'm reducing my tilling, I'm going to have more weeds. If I have more weeds and I'm not tilling, I'm going to have to put more herbicides on, which I'm thinking, which is better, putting a lot more herbicides on or doing no till? And what you're telling me is I can get away with no-till and maybe reducing my herbicide passes. That's exciting to me.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that I have a customer success associate like you and Steve that are going to help me understand this, because that's a revelation for me today. Thank you. Steve, what do you hear from the growers that you're meeting after they've signed the contract? What are the biggest challenges that they see and that you help them with?
Like I had said, the cover crop management for sure, and the nitrogen component can be another one. We offer some rate reduction programs, and working with guys on certain products that can replace some of this synthetic nitrogen can actually result in a payment from them. Some of that, knowledge comes back to our ag retail backgrounds. Both Mark and I and several members of our team have backgrounds in that, so we're pretty well versed on how to overcome some of those challenges with them.
Mark, there are some products out there that claim that their carbon footprint of manufacturing is better, or maybe there's a different source of fertilizers that are better than the other. Are you there to help recommend those products and help me understand what products may be more beneficial?
At this point, there's no direct correlation as far as carbon footprint of product and payments to the grower. We're not looking into the carbon footprint of their inputs per se and having that reflect in their carbon payment. We are proud to say that we're completely input agnostic, so we're not here to push any product over another. With that being said, if we come across something with an agronomic advantage and it may help that grower, by all means, we're going to make grower aware of that product and that it may help them. But our job is not to sell those products; it's to sell the agronomic benefits that those products may have.
And Steve, make no mistake, we're not here to replace their advisor or their PCA or CCA, right? We're here to actually work with them. How does that work? How do you work directly or indirectly with the grower or rancher's advisors?
Oh, for sure, all the time. And whether it be a channel partner that we're signed up with, or just a direct contact we make with the grower that says, "Hey, my crop advisor has all this information. I want you to work through him because I just don't have the time for it." We have quite a bit of that too. There's really very little set in stone structure as far as that goes. So if the grower wants direct contact with us and to manage everything himself, we're more than happy to meet with him. But I do have several accounts that I work primarily with their advisor on because the grower wishes it to be that way.
Yeah. I can see how many people are tapping the grower on their shoulder and saying, do this, do that, do this, do that. And the more that I'm in agriculture, I'm realizing that advisor-grower relationship is very sacred. And it's one of the three people a farmer really trusts, right? And so we're not here to disrupt that at all. And in fact, we work very closely with them and however the grower prefers us to work with them. So guys, thank you for coming on and for helping us understand this whole process, because there's a little bit of skepticism, I would say, in the marketplace, and you've helped dispel that, especially the follow-up process and where Agoro stands as a support team. So thank you for coming on and helping us understand a little bit more. If you want to learn more, you can go to agorocarbonalliance.com. There's lots of good information there. Where else can they go, Mark?
Our contact information is also on the website, and they can contact us directly if they have any questions or interested in talking, firsthand about their operation and getting information about their, eligibility to sign in with us.
So you guys are real people too, and you're not afraid to put your phone number in there, huh?
Yeah, we're here.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, guys. We hope that those who are listening are a little bit more interested. If you have any questions, please reach out to one of our team members. Give us a call. There's real people that answer the phones at Agoro Carbon Alliance. You can talk to Mark and you can talk to Steve and you can talk to real people. AgoroCarbonAlliance.com. You've been listening to the Agoro Carbon Farming Podcast, where we bring you knowledge on how to sustainably and profitably transform farming through carbon cropping. To learn more about how you can become a partner, visit us at AgoroCarbonAlliance.com or follow us on our many social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn.